On paper, the Note 17 looked like the ultimate mid-range champion. You get impressive-looking hardware, a huge battery, and a price that makes premium brands think twice. But there's something I've learned after using phones for a while. The first couple of days can be very different from the first month. The honeymoon phase can hide small problems that only become obvious with longer use. And after 1 month with the Redmi Note 17, that's exactly what happened here. There's still a lot to like about this phone, but two areas have become much harder to ignore: sustained performance and real-world camera usability. So today, I'm going beyond the specifications and focusing on the downsides you actually need to know before buying the Redmi Note 17. So let's get into it. The Note 17 looks and feels quite different from the slimmer Note 15. It's taller and heavier, coming in at around 225 grams, mainly because of the much larger battery and that almost 7-inch display. The back panel curves softly into the frame, and the matte finish does a good job of keeping fingerprints under control. But you definitely feel the size when you pick it up. If you're coming from a thinner phone, there's going to be an adjustment period. One-handed use can also be harder, especially if you have smaller hands. So you'll probably find yourself using both hands more often. For protection, you get IP65 resistance against water and dust, which should help with accidental splashes. And the display uses Gorilla Glass 7i, designed to provide additional protection against drops and scratches. So, the phone feels reasonably well protected. But the biggest question isn't really about the outside. It's about how well the hardware holds up when you start using it every day. The Note 17 comes with a huge 7-inch AMOLED display and a 120 Hz refresh rate. That's almost tablet-sized. And you immediately notice how big it is when you turn the phone on. Colors look good, contrast is solid, and most content feels lively on this screen. Xiaomi claims up to 1800 nits of peak brightness. And in my experience, outdoor visibility has been decent enough that I didn't have major problems using it outside. But there are a few limitations. On YouTube, playback is limited to HD, and there's no HDR support. So even if your internet connection can handle higher quality, you can't simply increase the resolution. For someone who enjoys watching content at higher resolutions, that feels restrictive. And according to the script, this appears to come down to the entry-level chipset, which doesn't support more advanced playback. Audio is another area where the phone feels fairly basic. You get a single down-firing mono speaker. It gets reasonably loud and works fine for casual use, but you don't get the depth or stereo separation that some competing phones offer with dual speakers. I've generally liked Xiaomi speaker tuning on previous phones, so this feels like a small step backwards, especially on a phone with such a large battery and display. Of course, you can easily work around this by using good earphones or earbuds. And if you mainly watch content with headphones, the display itself remains a strong part of the experience. But now, we need to talk about the area where the 1-month experience becomes much more interesting: the performance. Redmi Note phones have never really been the front runners when it comes to performance. And after a month with the Note 17, that limitation becomes easier to understand. The phone uses the Snapdragon 4 Gen 4 chipset, paired with up to 8 GB of RAM and 128 GB of storage. The RAM configuration starts at 6 GB this year, while storage is more conservative by default. You do, however, get expandable storage if you need more space. For normal everyday tasks, the phone is perfectly usable. Scrolling through social media, using WhatsApp and other messaging apps, streaming video, light multitasking, and casual browsing all feel fine. But this is where the title of this video starts to make more sense. The problem isn't basic performance. It's what happens when you ask the phone to keep working harder. Demanding games, longer gaming sessions, and serious photo or video editing push the chipset much harder. And that's when you start seeing frame drops and slower loading times compared with more powerful phones. In games like PUBG and Call of Duty, you can get around 40 to 45 frames per second on balanced or medium settings. At the lowest resolutions, you can reach up to 60 frames. But once you start pushing the graphics higher, the frame rate drops and stuttering becomes more noticeable. So the phone is clearly happier when you keep the settings moderate. And there is an important positive here. The Redmi Note 17 actually stays reasonably cool. During a 30 to 40 minute gaming session, it doesn't throttle badly. That's likely helped by the large vapor chamber, which allows the phone to remain relatively consistent, even though it isn't particularly powerful. So after a month, my conclusion is pretty straightforward. The Redmi Note 17 is fine for casual gaming and everyday use. But if you're buying it specifically for competitive gaming, this isn't the phone I would choose. And that distinction becomes important when you look at the camera, because the same idea appears there too. On paper, it looks perfectly reasonable, but real-world use tells a more complicated story. The Redmi runs HyperOS 3 based on Android 16, and the software feels fairly well tuned for an entry-level chipset. You don't get every customization option you see on Xiaomi more expensive phones, but there's still enough here to tweak the home screen, icons, and basic layout to your liking. I love that Note 17 continues to support the IR Blaster and My Remote app, which I feel is an underrated feature that's becoming less commonplace across devices. There are quite a few pre-installed apps out of the box, but the good part is that most of them can be uninstalled or disabled. General navigation runs at 120 Hz, and most apps scroll smoothly, but the phone does feel a bit laggy in day-to-day use, and heavy usage makes it more observable. The big advantage you get on the software side is the promise of 4 major OS updates and 6 years of security patches. In this price segment, that's about as good as it gets, and it should help the Note 17 stay relevant for a long time. Battery life on the Note 17 is pretty exceptional. The phone managed a little over 16 hours on a full charge, which is decent for an 8,000 mAh battery, but a bit lower than what I was expecting from a capacity this big. In actual use, however, the phone only dropped 4% after an hour of gaming and another 4% after an hour of streaming video. That's excellent optimization and better than what I've seen on most phones in this price bracket. With that kind of efficiency, you can comfortably expect 2 days of use if your routine is mostly calls, chats, social media, and some streaming. Even heavy users should get roughly a day and a half before needing to charge again. A full charge takes a little over an hour with 45-watt wired charger, which is more than acceptable for a battery this size. You also get reverse wired charging, which is genuinely handy for topping up smaller devices like your earbuds, smartwatch, or even another phone in a pinch. So if battery life is your main priority, you'll never worry about that with this device. The Redmi Note 17 uses a 50-megapixel AI rear camera, and in good daylight, the results are actually quite pleasant. Photos look clean and natural, with colors and contrast that generally stay true to the scene. For everyday sharing, the images look good, but once you start looking closer, you can see where the limitations are. Fine detail and edge sharpness are fairly modest when you zoom in. Portrait shots are better in some respects. Skin tones are accurate, and edge detection is good, especially around hair. But if you look closely, there can still be some noise and softness. And then we get to low light. This is where the camera's limitations become much harder to ignore. There's no image stabilization, and the smaller sensor makes it harder to retain detail. Textures can become smoothed out, while visible noise starts appearing in darker scenes. The colors remain pleasant and don't become excessively saturated, but the camera simply doesn't have the same flexibility you would get from a more capable setup. There's also no ultra-wide lens and no OIS, and that means you have fewer options when shooting different types of scenes. Video is another clear limitation. The phone tops out at HD recording at 30 frames per second. There's no 4K option. That feels quite low by today's standards, although it can still be perfectly fine for casual clips. The 16-megapixel selfie camera is also usable for calls and social media, but it can add a slight red tint to skin tones and loses some detail, so it performs best when you have good lighting. So once again, the story is similar to the performance section. The Redmi Note 17 can do the basics, but if you expect more from it, especially in difficult conditions, the limitations become much easier to notice after spending more time with the phone. In conclusion, should you buy the Redmi Note 17? After 1 month, my view of the Redmi Note 17 has changed. It's no longer the undisputed mid-range king that some launch day impressions made it sound like. That doesn't mean it's a bad phone. Far from it. If you're a casual user who prioritizes a beautiful display, excellent battery life, and basic social media use, the Redmi Note 17 remains a solid, budget-friendly option. The huge battery is a major strength. The display is enjoyable. Everyday apps work well enough, and the long software support is another reason to consider it. But the buying decision becomes different if you're a heavier user. If you're a mobile gamer, the performance limitations become more noticeable when you push demanding games. And if you rely heavily on your phone to capture fast-moving subjects or shoot in more difficult lighting, the camera limitations can become frustrating. In that situation, it may make more sense to look at an older flagship model or save a little more for a phone with a more optimized processor and more reliable camera processing. If you enjoyed this review, check out the other smartphone reviews on the channel for more long-term testing and real-world experiences. And if you're considering the Redmi Note 17, let me know in the comments. What matters more to you? Performance, camera, or battery life? Don't forget to subscribe for more honest tech reviews, comparisons, and long-term testing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.